Summer is here, and that means it's time for summer events at Serenbe. Throughout June and July, join us every weekend for live music Fridays on the farmhouse porch, the Saturday farmers market and farm tours, a bevy of weekend wine tastings, goat yoga, and you can tour our furnished model homes. We also have lots of special events, which include multiple film screenings hosted by the Art Farm, a floral arranging class at Serenbe Farms, and of course, the annual Chatt Hills 4th of July parade. Head to the events calendar in our show notes to learn more. We'd love to see you this summer in Serenbe. Glen Slater grew up riding bikes everywhere and later worked in a bike shop in college, where he realized that his interest in building and machinery connected nicely with his love of cycling. He opened his own bike shop, Pro Bike Repair, in 2012 and moved it to Serenbe in 2019. In the intervening years, PBR has become the unofficial welcome center due to its location in the Crossroads, just past the Serenbe entrance, and it's known for its laid-back, easygoing feel. So laid back, in fact, that it's not uncommon to see residents and visitors alike head into the bike shop with a beer, a glass of wine, or even a charcuterie board ready to unwind and hang out. We also have a very special co-host for this conversation. We're joined today by Micah Adler, the COO of Serenbe Real Estate, husband of Steve's middle daughter, Kara, and a pretty avid cyclist in his own right. In this interview, Micah and I chat with Glen about the bike scene in Serenbe, the many ways people choose to hit the trails and roads in Chatt Hills, and his love for a good pair of jean shorts or jorts.
I encourage anybody to come out here and check it out and just try to slow down a minute. Don't show up on city speed and catch it right away. You might have to slow down just a little bit to really appreciate it.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Serenbe Stories. Today, we have a fabulous guest, Glen Slater, who's with Pro Bike Shop. Glen, how are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. And we have a special co-host guest. Micah Adler is with us today because Steve Nygren has been traveling like crazy and it's been very difficult to get him. So we found a special guest replacement. Micah is the director of operations for Serenbe Real Estate, is married to Steve's middle daughter, Kara, who runs Camp Serenbe for your moms out there. And he also gets his bike serviced by Glen at Pro Bike. So we thought he'd be the perfect person to come in and help us out today in our interview of Glen.
So happy to be here and honored to be interviewing Mr. Glen.
Well, thank you, Micah.
All right. Well, Glen, the first question we always ask everybody on Serenbe Stories is, what is your Serenbe story? How did you find out about Serenbe and come to be a part of the community?
We've been riding the road loop around here that we call Silk Sheets for over 20 years. And I guess it was probably 15 years ago, people in the group would point out Serenbe as we'd pass by. But at that time, I only thought it was the inn at Serenbe, and I didn't know if the neighborhood even existed. But just more and more people would point out, oh, that's Serenbe. And then I could tell that it must have been nice based on the people who were pointing it out. It was probably about 6 years ago when I ventured through the neighborhood, and I had never been through here before. And then I have a dear friend who lives out here named Flynn, who would just tell me about it and just how unique it was. And when I had to relocate my shop in 2019 because they were getting rid of the building that I was in, I chose Serenbe to put my shop in here. And it was a big risk because it was a neighborhood. And I was used to being in a big strip mall where 50,000 cars a day drove by, but that didn't mean they all stopped in. And so I opened on May Day 2019 and had instant, I guess, recognition and response from the neighborhood. And people just started coming in and getting all kind of neat stuff done and buying all kind of cool bikes, and just turned into almost like a clubhouse for a while. People were in and out of here all day long, just hanging out. Some people not even cyclists.
I think it still is a clubhouse, don't you think?
Yeah, yeah. We should have done a little earlier these days, but yeah.
So you were here for about a year before the pandemic hit, but biking is still a pretty great sport.
That was actually, that was good for the entire outdoor industry, and it was great for the bicycle industry as well. People had lots of free time and were looking for things to do. And so a lot of them came and found bikes, and it was so It was such a response that the industry was wiped out of inventory for about a 1.5 year period.
That's
Just
right.
the simplest things, small parts, complete bikes were something you couldn't even imagine getting during that time. And now the inventory is back up. And so it's good. But there was a time there that the inventory was real lean.
And Glenn, when you say clubhouse, what's the secret sauce to your clubhouse?
I don't know. A lot of people ask me that. And I think it's just that I like people. I like all people. I like to talk. I like to learn. That's something that people respond to.
Is it true that you have a area where your cash register, but it also doubles as like a little bit of a bar area as well?
That's no secret. The fridge is full of beer always. People bring it in and drop it off, come in and have one. But yeah, it's very bike shop traditional to have beer around for sure.
Did you have that kind of a camaraderie and atmosphere in your old shop, or?
No, that's very unique to, I'd say, the neighborhood, really. It just was something that kind of organically spawned. I was sitting here one day, I was only in business about 7 days here, and I had my head down and I was working hard. And I looked up and there were two people sitting at we call it the bar, but it's the sales counter, with a bottle of wine, 2 glasses, and a charcuterie board. And they weren't even cyclists. They were just people who lived next door in the courtyard between me and the flower shop. They were just like, this is great. And they just wanted to come have their wine and cheese and meat here. And I was like, okay, I kind of see that it's not just going to be a business. It's going to be more of a meeting place.
That's super cool. So you've been biking for years and years and years, but How did you get into it in the beginning? Because I know when I first met you, you telling me your favorite thing is really to service those bikes. Like, you would love to just service them all day. I mean, you'll sell people bikes too, but that passion, like, where did that come from and how did that start?
Well, that probably just wanting to keep them top notch just came from other things I did in life growing up, whether it was, mechanics or carpentry or just things you learn along the way. But as far as cycling goes, I did BMX back in the 80s. We wouldn't have called it cycling. We'd have called it freestyle or BMX racing, but I did it. And we rode our BMX bikes everywhere. I would ride it to football practice. I would ride it 5 or 6 miles to a friend's house. We thought nothing about going what would be considered big distances on those style of bikes. I always had a bicycle around, just whatever. There was always bikes around. I got a car at 16, and I took a little time off from the bike for maybe about 4 years until I went to college. And then when I got to college, I could tell there was, no way to be close to my car and wherever I needed to be. So I got into cycling at that point. But I didn't know what I was doing. I just went and bought a $300 bike and thought that was everything in the world. And I'd ride it around and we'd jump it and we'd ride little groups and have fun with them. But like I said, it was just an entry-level bike. And then I got a job at a bike shop in college. That's where I really learned what makes them machines on a top level. They're bicycles, but there's a difference between the really, really high-end bikes and just a regular bicycle at like a department store.
Yeah, Micah, I don't know. Do you do any road cycling, Micah?
I do some road cycling and use the bike that Glenn services and can appreciate the environment that, Glenn, you're talking about in terms of the silk sheets and also it's called the gravel sheets as well?
The dirty sheets.
The dirty sheets.
The dirty sheets. And gravel has gained in popularity a lot over the last probably 5 years. We joke it's what all the cool kids are doing now. And there's a lot of reasons for it. I've always said I think it's because all types of bikes can participate. So you can have a straight up gravel racing bike, or you can have a mountain bike that has the gearing to hang, or you can ride a couple of different types of bikes on gravel. Whereas when you're on the road, you have to have a maximum speed, minimum resistance, just weapon to be able to compete with the other people out there. So yeah, gravel is the biggest thing out there right now. All the bikes are kind of geared toward being able to go gravel or road just by changing tires and or wheels.
And it seems like there's also a huge shift in demand for e-bikes as well, which I know you service, you build and sell and service e-bikes as well. In the area around Chattahoochee Hills, whether it's the dirty sheets or the clean sheets, silk sheets, that people are oftentimes doing e-bikes interchangeably with real bikes.
Yes. Yeah. The e-bike craze is huge. I would say it's getting all sorts of people on bikes who wouldn't be on a bike otherwise, whether they don't have the fitness or they just don't have the ability to push it or just whatever it is, or they don't want to work that hard. But it's huge. The biggest issue with the e-bikes is it seems that the vast majority of them are consumer direct, which means they have all sorts of different parts and pieces and inconsistent things about them. So they're difficult to service if they're not one that we actually represent the brand of. And,
do you have a favorite brand or?
Well, we sell the Scott e-bikes here, and then we also sell Surly e-bikes, and they all run the Bosch mid-drive system, which is pretty consistent across most of the upper end companies. And it's easy to work on, easy to get parts for, easy to diagnose.
Well, and there's also, to your point, Micah, that there's a ton of people just throughout Serenbe that have e-bikes that just use them instead of a golf cart or walking to get around, which I think is pretty cool. And that's just a nice thing. If, to your point, like maybe you don't want to get sweaty in the middle of the summer, or you're trying to go to an event, you can take it up the hills and that works. I want to flip back and dig in a little bit to the dirty sheets and the silk sheets, because some people may not understand quite what that is. Serenbe sits within 40,000 acres of the city of Chatt Hills, and it's absolutely gorgeous. But the road network, the actual asphalt paved roads, are considered the silk sheets. But there's some specific routes, right, Glenn?
Yeah, there's a big loop that I'll just use them from Serenbe. If you did the big loop around the perimeter of Chatt Hills from Serenbe and back, it's probably 37, 38 miles. You can condense that down to 26 or 27 miles and still do a loop, or you can do some smaller loops and go get a nice little 10-mile loop on. So there's a lot of options out there, and you can put it together and go connect to Carroll County and all kind of stuff and make it a big day if you want to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then the dirty sheets, you were talking gravel, which they are, but we might think of them as dirt roads, right? There's still a ton of roads throughout Chatt Hills because it's rural.
The vast majority of the roads in Chatt Hills appear to be gravel roads. The city takes very good care of them. Every time you go down them, you'll see pieces of equipment out there that have been grading them and smoothing them out and adding gravel and just whatever. They take very good care of them. It's some of the best cared for gravel roads I've ever ridden.
Well, that's good to know. And do you have, like, if somebody wanted to come in and figure out how to do one of these loops, whether that's gravel or silk, do you have maps, or how are you directing people?
We don't have any maps of it, but there's a ton of information online for both of those routes because of their popularity. And then we all use a competitive app, whether it be Strava or Ride with GPS or one of these other ones. And you can usually bring in those rides from just these apps that we all use.
Mm-hmm. You just see them over and over again.
Right.
And Glenn, the only other area in addition to the two that Monica just mentioned is the Cochrane Mill track that's adjacent to Serenbe. Can you unpack Cochrane Mill? Because I know that's a destination that people sometimes will go to Cochrane Mill and then land at Serenbe and have lunch and then go back to Cochrane Mill and then, or vice versa. Right. Describe that for us.
Cochrane Mill is definitely one of the best mountain biking trails around. I don't want to compare it to any others that people may like more, but it was built with a machine by a pro level Cat 1 racer who understands speed and turns and directions and things of this nature. And it's got, if we do the whole loop, about 20 miles of single track. And there's a couple of sections over there that if you were blindfolded and taken, you would swear you were in North Georgia because the topography is so steep and treacherous. And it's a phenomenal place. I exclusively ride trails there, and I mostly ride trails. We just go race other venues, but it's 5 minutes away. It's magnificent, and we're lucky to have it in our backyard for sure.
Definitely. Absolutely gorgeous. And for people who want to go hike too, it's stunning.
I see people just picnicking by the waterfalls. I mean, there's all sorts of activities out there, but the trail's top notch.
Yeah. When you're in the shop, you got the clubhouse, you're servicing bikes, people are stopping by. What's a typical day look like for you? What time do you open? What time do you close?
It's usually 10 to 5, Monday through Friday. And then I'm here on Saturdays, 10 to 4. Sundays, I'm usually here unless there's an event going on. And I always claim to be closed on Mondays because that's the day that I would run errands or do things that I need to be away from here. But I'm generally even open on Mondays at some point. So I'm generally here 7 days a week, but technically 6 days a week.
And what's the mix of servicing bikes or ordering, or do you put together these custom high-end bikes? You started talking earlier about they really are technical machines, and you can spend tons of money on these things.
Well over 10,000. That wouldn't be even hard to do anymore. But yeah, it has evolved into where I tend to do more custom work than anything else. And I don't know exactly what the percentages are, but I would say 70% of the bikes that we sell are where someone comes in and picks the frame, they pick the component group, they pick the spoke color they want, the hub, the rim, the lacing pattern, the tire, just everything, a total custom bike. That seems to be the majority of my clientele. We definitely sell bikes out of boxes, which just means we order it from the manufacturer. They send it to us, 70% assembled, and then we complete the rest. But the full custom thing is what I do a lot of.
But you also have, I know that we popped in for the boys, like our kids, when they're, getting a helmet or they needed a little pack to put on the back of it, or I've bought a basket from you. So you have a bunch of accessories too. But I feel like when you first opened, obviously early days, you've got all the basics in there, but it is jam-packed. Like, I encourage everybody to stop by. I mean, every nook and cranny is full. So tell us the other stuff that people can stop in and buy from you.
So certainly we have most all the accessories that you would want to make your bike look better or have room to carry stuff or just whatever. Apparel, helmets, shoes, pedals, anything you can imagine. Nutrition, chamois butter, which cyclists don't know what that is, all kind of stuff. And then, of course, the normal stuff, brake pads, tires, tubes, grips, saddles, the kind of things that people wear out on a regular basis. A road bike, if you don't crash it, it'd be like a piece of china. It can last for years as long as you don't crash it, but you still have to put tires on it and handlebar tape and things of that nature. But the actual bike itself would look unblemished.
And Glenn, I also noticed that there may be on the rack some jean shorts that you sell.
Jorts.
That are jorts that are actually cut off, like almost biker designer cutoffs that are naturally frayed. So it looks like somebody else cut them recently, but really they came to the store like that by designing bike cover.
They exactly did it.
And is it also true that you frequent those shorts and model them for the community of Serenbe on a pretty regular basis?
I did.
When you're not wearing the jorts, some people say that they're actually shocked to not see you in them. Is that true?
This is very true. I'm a big, big fan of the jorts. I don't know why. When they came out, I just liked the style. I liked the fit, and they were comfortable. But yeah, I have definitely been the jort model for Serenbe. That's for sure.
I don't think Serenbe knew we needed a jort model until you came to Serenbe. We realized what we were missing with you modeling the jorts the way that you had. So we appreciate that.
Guy at the 5-star restaurant. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Tank tops. Yeah. Well, we know you're on like a real date when there's no tank top.
Yeah. That's the first indicator. Yeah.
But tell us, are you joking, Micah, or is there really a designer jorts? I know there are jorts in there, but who are they from and why did you choose this line, Glenn? I want to know more.
So it's from a company out of Chattanooga called Hand Up. And they started off as a glove company. I won a pair of gloves, I don't know, back in like 2016 at the Snake Creek Gap. And I had them in my riding bag for like a year and a half, never thinking much about them. And then one day I put them on because I'd forgotten my other gloves. And I was like, these are really good gloves. And so I started looking at the company and I liked everything about them. All their gloves are pretty funky. They have sayings on the hands. And then they came out with crazy socks to go with them and crazy riding Hawaiian shirts. And they basically go after the casual cycling crowd. So when you get off your bike and you go into a restaurant, you don't look like you've been racing. You just look like you're wearing clothes. But they're technical fabrics and they're cut for cycling. So jorts, because of the way they fit, they stay out of your way when you're riding your bike. So some people prefer the look of that. Some people prefer the look of spandex, but that's where all this stuff came from.
So it's performance fabric jorts.
Performance fabric jorts. That's right.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're qualifying that correctly. And how many jorts are sold at your store on average per month?
I definitely set a trend a couple of years ago, but I think I might be one of the last group of people still rocking them. Yeah. I wore cargo shorts way too long, I think. So.
In the show notes, we'll get a photo of you and drop it in because I'm sure that listeners are interested now. Maybe we'll even do a link to Hand Up and give them a shout out and see if anybody purchases them. So what is the biking scene like around Serenbe itself? We've talked about Chatt Hills and a little bit about some of the e-bikes, but is it mostly casual bikers in the community? They're hitting up the gravel, or is it these fancy road bikes?
Well, so first thing I want to say is it's the largest group of kids on bikes that I've probably ever seen. So I see kids riding their bikes all over Serenbe, and that's just something that I don't see other places I go. And they even have like little kid biker gangs, like 4 or 5 of them at a time going places. I think that's very unique. But as far as the real cyclists out here, yeah, there's quite a few of them in Serenbe. It seems like everybody's schedule is such that, we don't get together in big groups, but you'll see people go off in pairs and 3s and 4s and go ride either gravel or the road. And sometimes even the trails. But at the trails, we would all drive over there and then just start at the trail.
Any favorite bikes for new cyclists if somebody was just getting into it? Our producer Katrina, who's there behind you, she bought her bike from you, but I don't know if that's a cruiser or what. She said she needs to get on it more. But what's your favorite newbie bicycle for?
Well, so I'm definitely into the bikes that are designed to go as fast as you can make them go. So I certainly like the lighter, more, technical bikes, the things that are made out of maybe titanium or even carbon fiber, which we joke and we call it plastic around here, but it's stronger than steel and it's light and it's what all the top bikes are made out of. Titanium is my favorite material. And if somebody wants a Thai bike, I'm ready to do that in a second.
Okay. But for like me.
For like you. Like you, I would say, like a hybrid. A hybrid is a upright, comfortable position bike with lots of gears and tires that can go a few places, but maybe not the mountain bike trails.
Okay. Nice.
But you can certainly ride all the gravel roads around here and things of that nature.
The other question I had about Serenbe biking, have you found an increase since you've been here and people kind of biking to the restaurants and kind of going on date night bike rides and with their family to different restaurants and casually kind of strolling through the neighborhood in that way?
I guess I do see some families with like little ones maybe riding as a family, but I don't really see like husband and wife going to dinner on their bikes. We mostly all take our golf carts to dinner, I guess.
You mentioned Flynn earlier, and so that's probably another great interview for us.
He's the local now, yeah.
Yeah, Flynn is our resident pool builder, but he is also an incredible cyclist and races.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember if you do any of the races with him or you just go out and support him, but tell us a little bit about that and if you've been able to recruit anybody else from the neighborhood into that very, very specific world.
So I started racing back in like 1994 and I did it pretty hard through about, 2018, 2019, right before I came to Serenbe. Flynn got into it probably about 6 years ago and he's just, been very determined and does what he's supposed to, trains, eats well, does all the things, and he's having phenomenal success. He completed in the Belgian Waffle this past weekend in Asheville, North Carolina, which is a race that's done in a few areas around the country, but it's a big, big deal, like 1,500 people. They rode like 140 miles. It took him 11 hours to complete this.
Wow.
Yeah, and you get a bottle of beer that says, you finished.
That's it.
There's no trophies. You got to finish. So
that's super cool.
But we still race single speed together. He is definitely ahead of me right now, and I'm glad to see it. But, maybe one of these days I'll get back on the bike and give him a run for his money.
Perfect. The other thing that I know, and in fact, I saw you yesterday at the Hill, and there was a couple or a woman and her daughter that you had encouraged to come grab a bike at the bike shop. So tell us about that. If you're visiting, what can we do? Can we rent bikes, borrow?
We rent bikes. They're mostly, what I call neighborhood cruisers. They're totally capable of riding anything that you're going to find in Serenbe. But if you're a serious cyclist, we don't have too many bikes that are for going out and doing the dirty sheets or go ride the trails. If you're someone who's used to riding top equipment, most of our rental fleet is mid-level, entry-level bikes, but, high quality, just, the kind of bikes that rent for $30 a day.
Kid bikes too? Do you have kid bikes to rent?
We have a few kids bikes. We don't have a ton of them, but we have about 4 or 5 kids bikes and then mostly adult bikes.
I should probably come de-accession a few of my kid bikes over there. Or maybe I'll give them to you, Micah.
Yeah.
We've got a few in the garage that need a home. So one of the last things we always ask everybody is if somebody was coming to visit Serenbe for the first time, what would you tell them to do? I mean, definitely they got to stop by the bike shop, pick up a beer or a bike and some jorts.
Maybe a riding Hawaiian shirt. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But what's a can't miss Serenbe experience that you would recommend to somebody who's coming over?
Definitely, this is the Serenbe Welcome Center, public restroom and direction hub. More people feel comfortable, I guess, stopping here and asking me where everything is out here, including the FedEx drivers looking for addresses, which can be difficult for some of the houses. I usually recommend going to one of the restaurants. I think all the restaurants are great. I usually recommend, maybe going by the spa or by Creek Retreat or by one of the little, what I call haberdasheries, but the little clothing stores and little gift shops and things of that nature. I just tell them to go explore around and experience it because it's a very unique place. I've been a lot of places, but I've never been any place like this.
I know I'm asking you a specific question, Glenn, based upon knowing what some of your hobbies are outside of biking. But for those people who choose to live at Serenbe, can you describe some of the extracurricular sporting events that you participate in that you would recommend? Because I know you've had some iconic moments up on the sports fields. That's right. I think it's worth mentioning.
Well, we have a neighborhood softball league out here. It's a Chicago-style softball with an oversized ball and generally no gloves, so lots of injuries, lots of fun. And then we have kickball, and once again, I think that's a great sport. I don't know if you guys recall, but we had Springfest about 3 or 4 years ago, and we had that 150-foot-long slip and slide that we made. We called it the adult slide because it was so long you would get hot before you got to the bottom because the sun was baking it. But there's all sorts of fun stuff out here. There's even a soccer league. A lot of guys get together and play kind of seriously on Sundays. They play right outside at one of the high school fields, but it's still a group of guys from here.
Yeah, I think I had heard that story, and maybe you can corroborate that. It got so big and they really needed, I think they needed multiple fields to play. So they had to go out and find somewhere else.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting, consistent with what Glenn has explained to us, when Glenn is up on any of those fields playing, he is wearing jorts.
That's right.
He's barefoot. So no shoes.
Yeah, I have
sometimes flip-flops, sometimes not.
Flip-flops
and then a pretty consistent, nice color tank top. And,
that's right.
And I'd say Glenn has one of the finest Serenbe uniforms you can find.
That's right. Thank you.
Well, and Micah, I can hear the jealousy in your voice, and I know your wife well enough that she will not let you out the door in that outfit.
No. But if Glenn outfits me with some jorts, I might be lucky enough to change her mind.
Yeah. I think there's a team.
We got a pair in your size.
I think there's a team uniform coming for one of these teams, guys. There you go. Then you're like, hey, listen, honey, it's a uniform. I have to put it on.
That's exactly right. Maybe Adult Big Wheel Racing next year. That could be your team uniform.
Oh, yeah. We should mention that. Do you want to tell us what that is? This is something that Hamlin does every year, one of the shops.
So that happened the very first year I was here. I heard about it. I've been here like a month and a half, and I heard about it, and I was like, oh, this ought to be interesting. And when I show up, I was like, wow, this is a big deal. They had like a little donut truck out there, and they were serving, mimosas, and people were dressed in character, and it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun with it. And it was, I guess ultimately I realized it was a team building event, but I didn't know what to expect when I heard Adult Big Wheel Race.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. I feel like it's coming back. Are we in the season, guys?
It's got to be close.
Close.
Yeah. Well, we interviewed Stacy, so people can listen to that episode as well, who owns Hamlin. Well, any final parting thoughts for us, Glenn, as we sign off here?
No, I appreciate you guys having me, and it's been fun to talk about my Serenbe experience. I encourage anybody to come out here and check it out and just try to slow down a minute. Don't show up on city speed and catch it right away. You might have to slow down just a little bit to really appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you that you're here, that you opened the bike shop, and that you gave us your time today. So thank you.
Thank you.